Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines. I'm Marty Radovanic, WTAJ News. If you were with us for our first two efforts in this regard, we're trying to talk about stories that maybe we report on kind of as we run by them, but maybe we want to talk about them a little bit more in depth. And so that's what the whole purpose of this program is. You'll see my email address at various times through the program. If you've got an idea about something you think we should tackle, please email me. Because, we'd love to hear from you. And I'm sure you have very good ideas and stories that maybe we haven't done as much with as we should have. Our guest today, and I'm very happy and honored to have Sheriff Jim Ott, Blair County Sheriff, with us. You're a busy guy, so I appreciate you taking the time. And I want some perspective so that when people listen to the kind of questions I'm going to ask you and the answers you're going to give, I want them to understand why we're talking to you. So give me a background. Where did Jim Ott, the police officer, the sheriff, law enforcement, where did that come from? How long have you done it? What's your background?
I'm old. So.
Well, you're not as old as I am, so we'll just leave that subject alone if you don't mind.
So this is actually counting my academy time. This is my 32nd year in law enforcement. So I've worked for a variety of different departments, all in Blair County throughout my career. Probably the most or the longest tenured was 20 years with Duncansville Borough, where I retired as the chief of police whenever I ran for my first election and became sheriff. I now am running, we'll wrap up this fall for my third term, so that'll give me, at the conclusion of that one, will give me 12 years in as sheriff then. And so it's been a very rewarding career.
Are you running for re-election?
This year? Yeah. Beyond that, I will tell you the way I came to the conclusion with this one is I'll pray about it. I'll talk to my family and what the Lord, my family tells me and my health tells me. If all the above say to keep doing it, I'll keep doing it.
The reason I ask you that is I have good friends who have been in your line of work for a long time. One of the friends of mine who's no longer with us was one of the founders of the Johnstown Police Academy. And Jim Mock, who was the Richland Township Police Chief, was a very good friend of mine.
I knew him.
And that was in the early days. And I always tell people the story. Jim, one of the things they had at the academy was a class called Shoot, Don't Shoot.
Yep.
And back then it was film. That's how old I am. But and you would be put as an officer on the street. And so I went through the class. And the idea is you're watching video, you're watching a film of suspects, and you have to make that split-second decision. Is this person dangerous or not dangerous? He just pointed a gun at me. Is it real or what? What are you supposed to do? And at Jim's retirement, I told the story about how Jim was the one who personally trained me, and through his excellent tutelage and great attention to detail, I shot and killed 4 innocent people. And the room laughed a lot. But the point is, that was really eye-opening to me, the kind of decisions that you have to make. You don't have time to think about them. If you're in a situation that requires you to do something, and the reason I'm asking you that, what kind of a person do you have to be able to do that and be comfortable in that kind of a situation? Because I got to think there'd be a lot of people going, no, wait a minute, I'm not ready for that. Is that a fair assessment? Or
Absolutely. So this job's not for everybody. No matter what line of law enforcement you get in,
right?
This job's not for everybody, and you have to be willing to answer a calling, because you're not doing it to get rich, you're not doing it to get famous. You're doing it because you want to help your community, and you're answering a calling, and that's really what it is. And we speak about this a lot of times. I teach at our Deputy Sheriff Academy on a couple of the different courses, and that's one of the things that we bring up. And in the firearms, and you brought up the shoot no shoot, we have a similar system, a video system that
right.
They have to shoot through. And and you'll see that's where we get to the point where there's a lot of hesitation and concern, and we talk through it. And some don't get past that, and we've had some that have left and said, this is just not for me. And knowing we try to be very clear and honest, like I do whenever I interview people, when I'm hiring new deputies, or when I was hiring officers when I was with the police department, to say, you really got to do a lot of thinking about what this could put you in, and are you going to answer that call? And you'll have some that without a blink of an eye will tell you, absolutely, I would do this and I would do that. And I will say my argument to that a little bit is you don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So you just hope that you have that in you, that in that circumstance that you do, first of all, you do the right thing, and that you do what your training teaches you to do, and that you still continue to answer that call.
Are you training young people today the same way they would have been trained? You said you're how many years as sheriff? I'm sorry, this is your third?
This will be the end of 7 years. I'm going on 8 years.
8 years. Are you still training your subordinates the same way you did 8 years ago, or have you had to modify it because of the world we live in?
I think in every line of work, but especially in law enforcement, I think you have to modify it. You have to adapt some, and I have to stress that some, because I do believe that some things you can't get away from, and when you start to do so, you do yourself a disservice. So you always want to provide the best service you can, and always doing the right thing, morally, ethically, and legally, is always important. So always drive that point home. But what we can do, and what we see, is a lot of the change that's happened in the community is with society,
Sure.
more particular. There's a lot of things that's now accepted, that now has become the norm, and some may want to call it even entitlement, that happens, that you now have to deal with. Maybe we didn't deal with that before.
What about tactically? Let's just use the example of the recent situation in Los Angeles, when under the direction of the administration, the beef up of ICE agents and going and deporting migrants, and they went into some neighborhoods, and it was a tinder cake just waiting to explode. And, people will gather and protest and do whatever because they have an opportunity, whether they truly believe in a cause or not. It really doesn't matter. If you're on the front line, okay, you're an officer on the front line, and there's a problem in a neighborhood, and you go into it, whether these people are trying to espouse a cause or not, if they're throwing rocks or fire bombs or whatever at you, you're in a different situation than what you would normally have expected while you are doing your law enforcement work. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yeah, and so that's why more and more, when you asked about the training, are we training
Right.
differently? So we didn't really have, the early part of my career, you heard about certain riot issues, or
Right,
certain even
right.
riot training. Now a normal standard training that we have is civil unrest, so we train for that. And we put our staff through at least the basics of it, and obviously any advanced training we can find or we can have available to us. So across the Commonwealth, you'll see there's a lot more preparation for that. Again, people are absolutely entitled to their right. They're entitled to freedom of speech. They're entitled to protest, gather in groups, and stand for what you believe in.
Right.
Whether I believe in it or not doesn't matter. You're entitled to do that, and that's what one of the things our great nation has, that we can do those things. The problem we have is when it becomes violent. We're going from standing a point of what we believe in to turning it into violence because we disagree with it.
Yep.
Or some, like you said, don't even really have a say in it. They just look for an opportunity. And there are those opportunists out there.
And that's something that's
Sure.
potentially going to happen. And along those lines, we used to say, well, it's not going to happen here. Can you say that anymore?
No, I don't think any community, if they say that'll never happen here, really needs to step back and take a look and reevaluate their thinking and their process. Even here, we have a great community. We've always said, our community has really treated us well, and the community and its law enforcement all work well together. But with that being said, we've had riots here. We've had protests here. For the most part, our protests have been very peaceful. But we've had a few situations happen throughout this career that I've been in, so in the last 30 years plus,
Right.
Where we've had some things that got out of control, where you listen to those others, our brothers or sisters in law enforcement, on the radio yelling for help because the crowd has consumed them, or they're go in to deal with one part of the situation. You referenced ICE.
Right.
You go in to deal with a situation, and now all of a sudden what you had a clear path getting in has now closed on you, and now you're surrounded. How you're going to deal with that.
And I want to talk without the political implications, but January 6th, if you're sitting at home and you're watching on television, you cannot say that some of those officers weren't in grave danger, because you could see the people that were surrounding them that were very angry. You can't really train somebody for that type of a situation, can you?
No, you can train the basics. At some point, your best training will still only get you so far.
Right.
And the rest is people don't always like to do that in this day and age to say it. The rest is in the Lord's hands. The rest is we're in God's hands
Out of
to
your
get home.
control.
Absolutely. And while we can be the best trained, the situation just may be that large that it consumes us and overruns us. In that particular incident, you had so much that happened.
Yeah.
No matter how you believe it happened.
That's not the point. I'm talking
Correct.
about you saw officers surrounded by very angry people.
Well, you also saw people that were there that weren't part of any type of violence who
Right.
also became victims.
Exactly. That's my point. Like, you see the video of the one officer whose head was caught in the doorway, and they're, that guy, I don't care what his political affiliation, at that moment, the only thing that mattered is that he was in grave danger.
Absolutely.
And it just seems to, you go back to the George Floyd demonstrations, which got out of hand, and people have talked about it recently in L.A., and it's not, again, I'm not trying to, blame anybody, but it's a situation. We are so divisive. We are so divided as a nation, and we all know it. We see it, whatever side you're on. It doesn't matter what side you're on. But I just wonder, is this something that is going to resolve itself? Or as a leader of law enforcement, is that something in the back of your mind, and you just have to make sure that your people are ready? You'd like to think it's never, but like you said, there have been outbursts around here. You can't say it, or a mass shooting. So, somebody walks into a church with a gun.
Sure.
And decides to start shooting people.
And we've had that.
And how do you handle if that happened here? If you got a call that pick a church, it doesn't matter. And I say church because, as I said to you before we started this, church was always one of the places that I felt the safest at, even through all of the things that have been happening. It's like a place of sanctuary.
Sure.
It's where you go to be with God. It's not something that you think about. You're not going through magnetometers when you're entering. At least not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, but I think you think that's coming with all kind of public.
You don't know. I mean, you look at where we're at now on other aspects that what we're going through now for security and heightened security and checks that you have to go through. In the churches, like you said, the church has always been that sanctuary of safety.
Right.
We had that here. We had that situation here where we had somebody that had, for whatever reason, made the choice that day and unfortunately created victims. Innocent victims, one of which started out in a church. Who was playing music and was minding her own business, and it went from there out through multiple people being shot, officers being injured, and eventually a suspect was consumed by it.
Yeah.
I was on that day. I was on that call. I was on the outskirts of it. I didn't get into the inner portions of that, but we all had to work together. So in any situation like that, you always hope that we train, we practice, you prepare.
Sure. Yep.
But until it happens, you hope that what you did comes back to build you forward. And I can tell you there's a lot of preparation in this area, all across Pennsylvania, but I will speak more candidly here in our Blair County and surrounding counties,
right,
that we work together. All of the different agencies work well together. We train together. And we make sure that we're trying to offer our folks as much as we can back.
But still, there's that moment, you went to a football game, whether it was a high school football game or Beaver Stadium, rocking with all those people. And you never thought, at least I didn't growing up, I'm going to a football game. There might be a little skirmish going on in the stands or somebody drinking a little bit more than they should and an argument starts.
Sure.
But it's gone so much beyond that. And I wonder, we just said, we're not going through magnetometers yet, but is that day coming where any kind of a public place, like if we walk into a mall or a grocery store or a football stadium, are we going to be walking through magnetometers and living that type of is that the place we'll be?
You always hope.
I'm asking what you think.
I think certain areas you're going to see that. I will say that a very dear friend of mine, I worked for his company as a contractor for firearms training, and Wayne Bush, retired trooper from the state police, was one of a few different folks that I knew over the years and we bring up churches, who would carry the church. We would carry typically off duty everywhere, but just even as
and you say carry, you're talking about you were armed.
A firearm.
Right.
Yeah, you'd be armed going into different places, your church, whatever. And for a while, it was the kook. You guys are the kooks. The sky's fall on you. And that wasn't it. Now, when we look at the things that we have said back then, has now come around that we're not so crazy. And to the point we now put together and orchestrate training for churches that your church is almost every church out there. And if they don't have it, they will be having it. They have to prepare for it. That they now have safety or security teams that they put in their church.
Yeah.
And again, almost every church has it. And we offer that, and we go through training, and we have trained several churches to be able to prepare for that. And again, just as we do for our law enforcement employees, we do this when our community asks us for help.
Do you think that type of because that's where we live now? That's to ignore it is at your own risk, because you can't really ignore it. I mean, I know I'm a little bit more aware when I go somewhere. I'm doing, I'm looking and checking out. And for no other reason, I always know where exits are between where I am, and it's just something that I've started to do, because it's like, what if I had to get out of here in a hurry? Where would I go? I never thought about that anywhere. It was never a concern. And I wonder, and the danger is, and I want to ask you, when you're training your people, you don't really know a person you hire. You do as good of and I know you do psychological evaluations. You have to. You got to know who you're working with.
Well,
Fair
sure.
enough.
You want to do as much as you can to check them.
But you can't know everything.
There's no crystal ball.
Yeah, and that's always been an issue, but I don't know, it was ever more of, I don't want to say danger, but certainly a concern. You don't want somebody who says, well, I know how to handle this and I'll take care of it, and they forget all their training and they just want to, that's not a world that we want to grow up in. And I got to believe that it's going to be hard for you to find people, if you stay in this job, that want to do that, because who wants to be in that situation where you literally are putting your life on walking out the door?
So you're seeing nationwide already a decrease in those folks, and as I started saying earlier, it's answering a call, so they're less and less that are answering the call. While we still have folks that will, and I'm very grateful to have that. So there's a lot of screening and vetting that needs to be done to try and hopefully be the right person coming into it. Is it for them? And then provide them what training we can, and certainly keep close tabs to try and help guide them and put them through situations that they come out right on the other side. But nationwide, absolutely, we're seeing a decrease in anyone that wants to step forward for a multitude of reasons. The pay isn't what
I'm just going to say, you don't pay them.
No.
You know that it's not what it should be.
Oh, not at all.
Especially asking them to lay their life on the line, which in essence is what you're asking them, right?
You're signing just like you do for the military. You're signing a blank check. You don't know what you're going to walk into, what your assignment is, and each day when you leave. And I try to stress this to my folks, and when I teach at the academy, I stress that to the deputies. Listen, each day when you leave, make sure that you have things right with your family. You don't know if tomorrow is a given. So make sure you do it right, and do everything you can to be aware of your surroundings. And we teach that in our classes. As you said, pay attention to what you're doing. I for the longest time I was the kooky guy that when I went into a restaurant, I didn't sit in certain seats and I had to be a certain direction.
I know.
I don't use booths. I want to know when I come in, to the point, my family, when they would come in ahead of me, my children were trained that way. And they would come in, and if
Dad's not going to sit here. We got to go find another place.
100%. And that's not going to work. Or yes, he's good with this table, but I still chuckle back to one of the times my now ex-son-in-law would come in to sit at the table and was going to take my chair. And I had stepped off to use the facilities, and my daughter said, Dad's going to sit there.
Yeah.
And
You're not sitting.
That's not going to work. And so I come back and sat down, and she said, see, I told you. He said, well, why couldn't I sit there? I said, well, between the two of us, who has the training? I said, when I'm not here, then maybe you can step up and take over that. But in the meantime, I can see the kitchen. I can see the door. I know where we came from. There's an emergency there. And worst case scenario, I'm going to take his chair and put it through the glass and tell you to get, and I'm going to deal with the situation.
People will talk about it. The incident we're all aware of, Butler, Pennsylvania, when then candidate Donald Trump was going to speak to what most people believe was about 50,000 people in the Butler County Fairgrounds, and they can estimate pretty well. You guys in law enforcement, you know where we are in terms of field, and so you got 50,000 people there. It's an outdoor venue, and whether or not there were mistakes made, that's not an argument that I want to be a part of. But the very fact of the matter is, the president-to-be was probably a half inch from being killed if he hadn't moved his head at the moment that the shooter fired at him. Now, however that guy got on that rooftop, it really doesn't matter. That illustrates what you're up against in today's world. People would have, no one would have come. I mean, you'd have your people that had mental issues and would want to cause, take somebody out or do whatever. But I don't want to call it, it's now normal, but it's now normal.
It's becoming more normal.
That's frightening.
And it's to a level, to an extreme that we've went beyond being able to say we disagree. I have a different view or a different value.
Absolutely.
On this. We've now taken it to the extremist, where I'm going to show you in a violent manner, and this is my choice I'm now making because I'm so focused on my belief or my hatred.
Your ideology, wherever it is.
That whatever that's
more important.
Yes, and it takes over the mindset, or you're doing it for a cause. And we all know, if we've watched in our history, when you're doing something like that for a cause, the dangers that can create and how unpredictable that can be.
When Abraham Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theater, General Grant was supposed to be with him, and at the last minute decided he didn't want to go. If Grant had been in the box, the likelihood is Lincoln would not have been shot because Grant's detail would have been there because they're military. They were trained, you know what I'm saying? And there really there wasn't a Secret Service then. There was a presidential protection, but it wasn't the same thing. So, but it was just a normal, everyday, we're going to the theater, who expected the President of the United States to be shot and killed. The point is, we've now come from that to this. Are we going to stop doing events because we're afraid of what may happen? And you're there, you could have been Corey Compatore. He's just there with his family. He's a police officer. He had nothing to do with anything, but he was shot and killed. So are we still going to be able to live our life and do our thing from a law enforcement standpoint? Would you say, sure, we can do this, we can protect you? Would you ever make that kind of a guarantee?
I don't think you can ever make that guarantee. I think what I can say and what I do say is that we will do everything in our power to try to protect you and keep you safe. What it comes down to is every person needs to be aware of their surroundings,
right,
and be very cognizant day to day what they're doing. And even then, that's not a guarantee, but that will help. And again, this falls back to going out into the community when we're doing something. Walking along, for so often now we see, everybody's staring at a cell phone.
Sure.
Everybody's got their faces down. It used to be a day you walked around and you paid attention to things around you. And then we got away from that. Now the phones and advancing to the future, well, in some ways, some of our future has crippled us. So we're putting that as our focus when we really should be put him down and pay attention when we're doing things. Just, you can eliminate so much by removing yourself from it. If you're paying attention, that will certainly help. But the society of today is not the society of when you and I were young. It had its own different things, but it's not of the violent tendency that we have today.
After supper, I'd tell my mom, she'd say, be home at dark. She didn't know where I was or what I was doing, and we didn't think about it.
Not at all.
We were just out, we were kids. We were playing. We were having fun. We weren't worried about that. Will we ever get back to a safer time? And again, I'm asking you as a law enforcement person. Or will it, not as safe as it used to be, because nothing's like it used to be. We all know that. But could we get back to a more, less pressure, less... I'm asking because I'm curious I don't see it. But then again, I'm 73. My long-term thing is not, I'm not going to be around forever.
Sure.
But what do you think, strictly from your law enforcement background?
I don't know that we'll ever get back to that. I do think that we as society have an opportunity. We have a choice and a chance right now, and in the near future moving forward, to start to make better decisions and to start to respect others, respect their opinions, make better choices and decisions about how we're going to react to things. And this can, again, back and forth, people can have their own say of things. My personal opinion is we've removed God from so many things in our life and so much in our society that almost off limits if you say it. I think at some point that comes around to show you, like, you have to have him in it. And I think if we start to put him back in life and in society and in our choices, we stand a chance of getting back to a better, safer, and a more moral society.
And you're certainly not the only one that espouses that. And that's where, you get into that and they'll say it's religion, it's politics. No, it's a simple belief in a system that we grew up in. But the point remains, and I just quickly, you can't guarantee your own safety. So you should always be aware of where you are.
It's up to each individual to make sure that you're aware of your surroundings and do the best you can to protect you. Law enforcement will do what they can do, but ultimately it's got to be each individual paying attention to your surroundings and try to remove yourself from dangers if you can.
Sheriff Jim Ott, thanks so much for your insight. God bless you for the job you do.
Thank you.
Stay safe, brother.
I appreciate it. I plan it.
And we'll see you next time.